Welcome, everyone. We're almost ready to go here, but before we begin, I would love to just get you to familiarize yourselves with the program. We are going to be asking you to write any questions that you have during our presentations today. You can do that by clicking the icon that looks like a little speech bubble with a little question mark, and you can leave your comments and your questions in there. We have our colleague Megan McGonigal who will be stopping periodically and asking your questions. We'll also have time for questions at the very end. And feel free to go in and just say hello, good morning, just to test out that questions box now. And we'll just give you a few seconds to go in and try it out. We also have some fun poll questions for you. We're going to be engaging you with some listening exercises as well. So hopefully you'll find it entertaining as well as informative today. Hello, welcome everyone. Great, I see some of you are trying out that questions box. Very great. Okay, so without further ado, welcome everyone to Oral Proficiency Strategies. We're going to be providing you some amazing tips today so that you can ace your OPI. I have wonderful guests with me today, so we'll begin with some brief introductions. I'm Priscilla Colon, the School and Faculty Engagement Manager for Transparent Language. You've seen me doing a lot of these familiarization videos, and some of these wonderful strategies that we're bringing to you. If you haven't caught them, we did parts 1 and 2 on reading and listening strategies, so be sure to go back and catch those. And today I have 2 wonderful guest speakers who are bringing all of their expertise with speaking strategies for you. So I'll hand it off to Talia to begin by introducing herself and launch with our presentation.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Talia Siegel. I'm a project manager at Transparent Language. I was actually hired by Priscilla for my former role at Transparent. So I am a former Hebrew language teacher, and I also have experience with the OPI, taking the OPI myself, as well as other oral proficiency tests, and a few years under my belt working with ILR leveled materials. Okay, and now it's time to introduce Lei Zeng, my colleague.
Thank you, Talia. Hi, everyone. My name is Lei Zeng. I'm also a project manager on the content team at Transparent Language. Before I joined Transparent Language, I taught Mandarin Chinese at the Foreign Service Institute and other military programs for 10 plus years. And also during that time, I worked as a certified examiner and tester of the Foreign Service Institute Language Proficiency Test. So the testing format of the FSI test is different from the OPI test, but basically we look at the same language benchmarks for grading.
All right, thank you, Lei. We want to start by talking a little bit about the OPI itself. Most of you are probably at least somewhat familiar with it, otherwise you wouldn't be attending this webinar, I presume. So just to kind of give a short overview of the OPI. So the ACTFL Oral Proficiency Interview is usually a 15 to 30-minute one-on-one interview, sometimes longer, between an examinee and a certified tester. The purpose of this interview is to elicit a ratable speech sample to determine the examinee's proficiency level. The OPI has 3 main stages. The first and last stages are the warm-up and the wind-down. These are intended to ease the examinee in and out of the interview and to make them feel more comfortable. We won't really focus on these stages in this webinar because the language required during these stages shouldn't really pose a challenge to most of us. We'll focus more on the iterative process. So the warm-up and the wind-down, so these are the stages that are made up of more small talk and chit-chat. So they're usually at the ILR 1 level or intermediate. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the iterative process. This is the one that is pictured here. This was the warm-up, this is the wind-down, this is the iterative process. It consists of level checks and probes in the form of questions or role plays, which alternate. The iterative process is actually the real meat of the interview. It takes the longest time as well. During this stage, the tester uses level checks to establish the speaker's floor or the level at which they consistently perform at successfully. And then they also use probes to establish the speaker's ceiling or the level at which communication breakdown happens. So let's talk a little bit about the levels we're going to focus on today. So these are the advanced and the superior levels, and they correspond with ILR 2 or ILR 3 speaking. What we're going to do is mostly act out portions of the interview with at-level questions and answers, which we will dissect together. Let's hear from Lei about the two main levels, advanced and superior, what the rateable speech sample should look like, and their characteristics. So Lei, what do testers listen for at these levels?
All right, let's take a look. So let's start from the advanced level on the ACFL scale, or that corresponds with ILR level 2. So at this level, the testee can use high frequency vocabulary and grammar patterns to talk about daily life situations and to give narratives, whether it is a personal experience or to retell a news story, so stuff like that. And the testee can use all three tenses, that including past, present, and future, in particular, the past tense. So the testees at this level can talk in paragraph lengths and keep going with confidence. However, they make a lot of mistakes. So it can be grammatical mistakes, word choice, or connector usage, or pronunciation, etc. So to the native speaker in the testing room as the tester, because the testee makes a lot of mistakes, you can see the emojis we put here. So the testee is very confident and keeps going, but the tester, the native speaker, has to concentrate on what the testee is saying and use common background knowledge, and sometimes even clarify with the testee to understand what they're trying to say. So at this stage, the two people, they are pretty unequal partners in a conversation. So at the superior level on the AFL scale, which is at ILR level 3, so the testee can use formal language. That is an important language benchmark. So formal language to express and, more importantly, to support one's opinions. So discussion at this level is at a higher level than personal experience. And then the testee can provide examples at the community level, the societal level, or the national level, instead of like retelling a personal experience, the story happened in the past. So mistakes are still allowed, but it rarely hinders the conversation from moving forward. Barriers at this level usually exist at the cultural level or historical reference, but after clarification, the conversation can still move on. So that requires a high level of accuracy with formal language and express and sustain one's opinions. So to a native speaker, I would feel that the conversation feels smooth. So again, that requires not perfect, but a very high level of accuracy of language use. So the two people in the testing room are much more equal partners in the conversation.
All right, thanks, Lei. We're going to move on and we're going to start with our reenactments in a moment. We're going to start with the advanced level, or ILR 2. All of our questions are going to be on the same topic, just to keep it kind of topical. They're going to be about vacation accommodation, as you will see. So at this level, speakers are expected to provide very detailed narrations, to tell stories, hence the name, the storyteller. That's kind of like the nickname that we gave the speakers at this level. So when I present my responses, just try to listen for these things, mostly time frames in the past. It's usually a past narrative, but there's also narration of some present or even future events. Another important thing is details, details, details. I'm not just talking very generally about something that happened. I'm going into detail. I'm kind of making a mental image of the event that happened. So I'm going to let Lei talk a little bit about our upcoming poll. This is going to be the first poll for
Yep.
the advanced level.
That's right. So we have a fun poll for everyone. So we listed out some language features and benchmarks, and we'll ask you to select all that you hear in Talia's answer to my question. So the first choice is multiple time frames. Second one is details of an event. The third one is high frequency vocabulary. And the next one is paragraph length response. The last one is supported opinion. So hint, hint, you are not supposed to hear all of them in her answer. Okay, so I'm ready to ask my question, Talia. Are you ready to answer?
Yes, let's see how I do.
Let's see. So the question is on top of the slide. I will just read it out loud for everyone. So you mentioned that you went on vacation recently. Where did you stay? Tell me everything about your accommodation.
On my recent vacation to Vienna, I stayed in a really cool hotel. It used to be a nursing home, and now it's a hotel. And the design was not very traditional. In general, the design was very simple, and the room only had the essentials. I believe that some Americans would find it a bit too simple, but I appreciated the effort behind it. Another thing I really liked about it was that only refugees work there. They do their internships at the hotel and learn a lot about hospitality. I really liked that idea, and the best part was that they offer a breakfast buffet with a traditional European breakfast and Middle Eastern specialties. All right, so Lei, do we have any poll results, or are we
Yep.
opening the poll?
So let's launch the poll and see what you got. Please select all that apply and leave those who didn't hear it out. Just give it a minute.
And for those of you who are seeing the poll on your screen, you can just check off any of the check boxes that you see. Okay, so we have some answers coming in. Okay, just a few more seconds to check off anything that you think you heard. Okay, so let's close that poll, and I'm going to share the results. Okay.
All right. So, sorry, Priscilla.
Oh, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I think a lot of you caught the typical language features that a tester would look for at the advanced level or the ILR level 2, such as multiple time frames, details of an event, and also she did use high frequency vocabulary, and her answer was in paragraph length. So that's not just sparse sentences not connected to each other. It has some sort of organization with speech connectors. So I did see that some of you selected supported opinion. While I do say that she does have an opinion because she liked the hotel that she stayed in and the service was good. So that you're correct, that counts as opinion. However, we also need to listen to the level of language that she used. So is it just I liked, or is it at a higher level that I appreciate their service, or I cannot, so instead of just I received a really good service. So besides the opinion, we also need to think about if she sustained her opinion at a community or societal level, that will be a higher level language benchmark instead of she only used her personal experience to tell a story. So that's why I would say for a tester, then this answer would be a typical ILR level 2, a storyteller type of answer. All right, thank you, Priscilla. Now let's take a look at some specific examples of why a tester would score this one as a level 2. So as a tester, I heard different time frames mostly the past tense. For example, I stayed at the hotel and it used to be a nursing home. And another thing I really liked, and only refugees work there, that's present tense. They learn a lot about hospitality, so different time frames. And also I heard quite a bit of details. So the design was not very traditional. It was very simple and traditional European breakfast and Middle Eastern specialties. So again, personal stories. So Talia, you did very well in the at the IR level 2. On the other hand, as mentioned before, something that we cannot reenact here is that it's hard to reenact the grammatical errors or errors in word choices, because at this level, the testee and the tester, they are unequal partners in the conversation. So again, we see those emojis. So Talia, she just kept going and going with confidence. But for me as a tester, I still had to concentrate on, okay, what are you really trying to say? So it's not entirely smooth. I just wanted to remind everyone that this is not something that we can reenact here, but it does, it happens. It's a typical scenario happening in the testing room.
Thanks, Lei. I wanted to add before we move on to superior, it is true that we're sometimes indoctrinated to think that at ILR2 there is no opinion. So of course at this level you're going to be able to talk about likes and dislikes, and a lot of OPI questions at this level focus on that, on likes and dislikes. They ask you to compare pros and cons, likes and dislikes. So it won't be out of the ordinary to be asked about something like that that asks for your opinion, but it's not necessarily an opinion that is supported by arguments, as you will see. I'm moving on to superior. Okay, so this is the debater. We call this the debater because, as I just kind of like mentioned, a speaker at this level is expected to provide arguments. They're expected to persuade. Whereas the advanced speaker or ILR2 speaker is more of a storyteller. So at this level, speakers are expected not only to state their opinion, but also to convince you, to persuade you of something. They use well-organized or well-structured arguments to sustain opinions with the purpose of having the listener adopt their point of view. So the hallmarks of this level you will hear are supported opinion and persuasion, abstract general discussion, and I'm not talking about philosophy here. It's not that abstract. It's more to do with not pertaining to the person, but talking on the communal or societal level, not only talking from personal experience. You can talk about some personal experience, but then you need to take it to the next level. Another hallmark is more formal language, where we're moving away from just the kind of colloquial chit chat that we use in our daily lives.
Yes.
Okay, so here again, we're going to go with a poll. I'll let Lei take it away.
Alrighty, so let's take a look at the second poll here. If we can, yep, exactly. So we also have 5 choices here listed, and please select all that you hear during Talia's answer. The first one is opinions. The second one is supported evidence. And the third one, lots of personal details, personal stories. And the last, next one is formal language. And so formal language just refers to, like, if you're doing a presentation, if you're a talk at a conference to a business partner, involved in a argument instead of just daily life. Oh, I had a good day, I had a bad day, that sort of. It's not necessarily like really low frequency idioms. That's not what we are looking for now here. And the last one is abstract discussions. So again, hint, hint, you are not supposed to hear every single one of them. Alrighty, so my question is on the slide. I will read it out loud. You mentioned that you went on vacation recently. Over the past year, more and more communities have imposed restrictions on short-term rentals due to their impact on the local housing market. On the one hand, they contribute to the local economy by inviting tourists into the community, while on the other hand, they negatively impact housing supply. Do you think that the decision to restrict short-term rentals is reasonable?
Well, funny that you mention it. My friend and I had an argument about this topic last week. Personally, I used to stay at Airbnbs, but I've been avoiding them recently. Instead, I opt for hotels where I actually feel like a guest. As of late, a stay at a short-term rental comes with a list of chores, despite the exorbitant cleaning fee that one has to pay. The short answer is yes, I am in favor of imposing restrictions on short-term rentals. In fact, I wish more communities did the same. The long answer has to do with the impact of short-term rentals on desirable neighborhoods in city centers across the country. Many properties that could be long-term rentals are taken off the market, making it rather difficult to find a decent apartment in these areas. As a result, the majority of people who work downtown are forced to live in the suburbs due to the shortage in rental supply. This has several negative effects. First, people must drive long distances to and from work. Not only does it negatively affect the environment, but also their well-being. Second, short-term rentals, while they drive the local tourism industry, also drive housing prices up, making living downtown less affordable for locals. Last but not least, these properties stay vacant for a big part of the year. If they were long-term rentals, they wouldn't get in the way of community building by allowing more locals to live in the area. That's not to say that I'm against short-term rentals as a concept. They can be beneficial to the community if they're kept under control. Nevertheless, I would like to see local governments impose more restrictions, such as taxing these rentals as businesses or limiting the number of short-term rentals per square mile, in order to protect their communities and allow more locals to afford to live in a place with a walkability score of 70 and above. All right, so I think we're going to move on to the second poll. Are we opening the poll? Awesome.
Yep, I've just launched it. So again, feel free to check in the little checkbox any and all that apply.
And another reminder, they shouldn't all apply. So try to think of things that were maybe things that you shouldn't have heard in the response.
Okay, I see some results coming in. Oh, okay, some answers are getting more than others. That's good.
Yeah, I hope I scored a 3 on this.
I'm hoping so. Let's see,
Yeah.
let's see.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay. I'll give you just a few more seconds to check all that apply. Oh, awesome. Okay, we've got everyone in. So I'm going to close the poll and let's look at the results.
All right. Gonna let Lei take it away.
All right, so I would say that a lot of you were spot on when catching language features in Talia's answer. So definitely opinion. She voiced her like likes and dislikes, and also she provided supporting evidence. She wanted to. There was persuasion involved that she wanted the government to impose restrictions and things like that. So lots of personal details. I would say yes. At the beginning, she did mention her personal experience with friends staying, used to stay in Airbnb, but now they chose to stay in hotels. However, so the percentage of personal details compared to the entire answer is small. And also, in addition, she used it's not like personal experiences are not allowed in a higher level answer, but she used her personal experience as a bridging point to reach to a higher level of discussion at the community level. So what has this restriction or this, how did the rental market, what's rental market impacted and how was people's lives affected by that? So that was just the bridging point to a higher level discussion. Also, I did hear formal language and absolutely abstract discussions. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's take a, yes.
So one second, I wanted to say that was kind of like a trick question with personal details, because I did say the word personally, I did use I a few times, so it can trick you into thinking that I was focusing on personal details. So don't feel bad about it.
Thank you, Talia. So As a tester, I put her the speech samples I collected into 3 categories. Let's take a look at each one. The first one is supported opinion and persuasion. So she said, as a result, people are forced to live in the suburbs due to the shortage in rental supply. And I opt for hotels due to list of chores and exorbitant cleaning fee. Nevertheless, I would like to see local governments, which brings us to the second category, to impose restrictions on the rental market. So formal language, again, that's an important benchmark for level 3 answers. And she also said there's a shortage in the rental market, and then despite, and I am in favor of, and negatively affect their well-being, and it drive housing prices up. So it's not simply just the housing prices went up or increased. It had a negative effect. It influenced people's lives, but negatively affect their well-being. So that's another level of language there. And the last category is abstract, general discussion outside of personal experience. So for example, the impact of short-term rentals on desirable neighborhoods across the country get in the way of community building. That is not to say I'm against the short-term rentals as a concept. So these are larger discussions beyond personal experience in the past or present. And we also have a bonus point here. She also had hypothesis in her answer. So such as if they were long-term rentals, they wouldn't. If they are kept under control, then something else would happen. So that's also a bonus point at a higher level answer. So if you can make hypotheses. And Talia, do you have anything to add on my notes?
I think that sums it up. So I think now it's time to move on. I think that I mentioned that we're going to focus on ILR 2 and ILR 3, but it's also good to give some to dedicate some time and attention to what's in between. And that is the ILR 2 level or advanced high. How does the tester reach that decision that a speaker is not a 2 or a 3, but rather a 2+? What makes a speaker more than advanced, but not quite superior? We call this person a storyteller with potential. That is one type of ILR 2+. And let's hear from Lei. I think maybe we can give the question first and the answer, and then we can discuss it because it will make it a little more succinct or easier to follow.
Yeah, so let me just briefly describe what could have happened in the testing room to make a tester feel like, okay, this person is a storyteller with potential. So let's see, we are in the warm-up stage and level checks, and I feel like this person is a solid level 2. So I didn't see any potentials in warm-up. So my first question will be at ILR level 2, it's a factual question. Give me an experience of this and that. Tell me a story of this and that. But when the testee gives their answer, then I heard, okay, this answer is too good for a level 2. So there is potential. Maybe the vocabulary is at a higher level. Maybe the conversation is really smooth. So I want to see if there's a light bulb lit up in my head. I want to see if this testee can go further. So then I ask a higher level, a probe question. At level 3, I ask a opinion level question and see what the answer would be like. However, there is a communication breakdown of some sort. It can be due to all kinds of reasons. We'll see in our reenactment. And then which means this testee can perform all the levels below at 2+ and below, so no problem. But they are not quite there yet at a higher level. So that makes me think this person is a 2+ speaker.
Right. All right. So we're going to start with the level check. So the level check is to establish the floor. So this is the level that I perform at consistently, so ILR 2. And in
Yep.
our next slide, we're going to talk about the probe. So I'll
Yep.
give it away.
So same question. You mentioned that you went on vacation recently. Where did you stay? Tell me everything about your accommodation.
All right, so my husband and I traveled to Lexington, Kentucky last spring, and we stayed in an Art Deco hotel downtown. Our friend, who is a modern art enthusiast, recommended it to us since it's a combined hotel and art gallery. After visiting the gallery, I felt better about paying such a high nightly rate. Although the building's architectural style was Art Deco, the rooms had more of a modern feel, which was a bit of a disappointment for us. All in all, we had a wonderful stay and enjoyed dining at the various restaurants you could walk to within minutes, including the fine dining restaurant on site.
All right. So here, because the plus levels are a bit tricky, so we didn't do a poll here. Instead, we will talk about the language features that I caught as a tester and see why I think the speaker has potential. So she sounds more eloquent to me. So words she used like with a modern feel, which is a bit of a disappointment. And since it's a combined hotel and art gallery, also there are speech connectors such as although and all in all as a summary. Also, I heard a higher level vocab. For example, Art Deco hotel. It's not just beautiful. It's not just traditional. It's Art Deco hotel, very specific. A modern art enthusiast, architectural style, and fine dining restaurant on site. So these all just make me feel like it sounds too good. I have to go. I have to probe. So I asked a level 3 question, which is, so you stayed in a hotel. What are your thoughts on short-term rentals? In the past year, short-term rentals have been facing restrictions in more and more places because people think they negatively impact housing supply. Do you agree?
Yes, you're right about that. I chose a hotel over a short-term rental because I think that they ruin cities. Most people can't afford to live in nice places anymore. I had to move far from my work because of Airbnb. They're affecting how many houses you can rent downtown. I think I think that they should be stopped.
Good job, Talia. Good job. So let's look at the emojis that precisely reflect Talia's face in the testing
That's
room
me.
and my face in
That's
a
Lay.
tester. Well, I won't show it on my face, I promise. All testers are highly trained, and then they're there to bring out your best potential. However, the emoji shows that there's a communication breakdown. So now let's take a look at how it happened. Where did we fall short of a level 3 answer in our response? So it's missing supported opinion and persuasion. So I heard personal experience a lot. I heard paraphrasing. And I didn't hear any abstract general discussion at the societal community level. And it's also missing formal language. So she used, oh, they ruin cities. People can't afford to live in nice places anymore. So I think they should be stopped instead of to impose restrictions like what we heard just now at level 3. And also, when she was looking for the correct words, she used a lot of paraphrasing, like how many houses you can rent instead of housing rental supply. So here I am hearing an inconsistent debater. And also, I'd like to remind you that something that we cannot reenact is the grammatical errors and word choice mistakes, pronunciations. It definitely created some barrier in understanding what the testee is really trying to say. Also, at the plus level, 2 plus, the testee is typically stronger in vocabulary, either vocabulary or grammar structure, but not both. at the same time. So that's also an important benchmark that a tester will look for at the plus level.
Right. So thank you for bearing with me. This is probably more in line with how I would actually perform because I'd be nervous.
You're too humble, Talia.
Yes. So now let's now that we've looked at the different levels, we would like to share some tips that are relevant to all three levels. So let's look at the next slide. We're going to start with this big tip here in the middle. Leigh's going to talk a little bit about it in more detail, and then we're going to get into the do's and the don'ts.
Right. So one overarching piece of advice we can give everyone is to get used to practicing in your target language level outside of your class, and also in a broad range of topics. So sometimes we just feel like, especially after 5 hours of classes per day, you turn off your computer, and then especially a lot of us are online right now, we lose the language environment, chit-chatting with teachers in the hallway or working on a project with your classmates, but which makes practicing outside of your classroom even more important, because we need to get used to think. Even if you want to talk to yourself in your head, that's good practice as well. So we need to be able to talk at your target language level. So like if you are targeting level 2, then you read a piece of news story, can you retell it in Spanish if that's your target language? And if you see a debate on TV, can you do something similar with yourself to argue for or against something at level 3 in Spanish? Also, since we cannot predict what the tester will ask you in the testing room, we need to practice in a broad range of topics. And also, so like what I mentioned before, the tester is your friend. The tester is not your enemy. They are trained. That's why we have the warm up. So they're trained to calm you down and then bring out your best performance. So if you feel challenged in your test, that is a great thing because they see potentials, they see how far you can go. So even if there is a language breakdown, that means they have successfully collected language samples to rate your ceiling. So so definitely don't see the tester as your enemy, see them as your friend.
Right, thank you, Leigh. We're going to talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts. So the first one, it has to do with your tester. You should always listen carefully to how they word the question. If you're not sure that you understand the question, you can ask for repetition, explanation, or clarification, because you do want to provide an answer that responds to the question itself. The second do would be to speak only in the target language and avoid using words from other languages. So if you cannot remember a word, do your best to paraphrase or give an example. Now, we're not talking about loan words. Some languages use English terms that are the norm in the target language. Of course, you can use those freely, but if something just doesn't sound quite right, or you're using a cognate that doesn't really exist or isn't really used, that's something that you would want to avoid. Next, it's important that you can always invent a story, just come up with something, or borrow somebody else's opinion or somebody else's story in your speech. You're not graded by your standpoint or your opinion or the accuracy of the information you provide. No one is fact-checking you. Very importantly, use connectors. This is a huge one. You really want to practice those connectors. They help you organize your discourse instead of just stringing disjointed sentences together. They're really one of the most important things you'll be tested on. Not only do they make you sound better, they actually help you organize your thoughts in your mind. Let's move on to the don'ts. The first one, don't stress if interrupted. There may be instances when the tester may need to interrupt you. So know that it's not necessarily a sign that you're doing poorly. Sometimes that means that the testing team has collected sufficient samples to move on to the next phase, or it can also mean that you're doing really well and the tester wants to interrupt you in order to challenge you even more. Next, don't panic. Prompts can be a little strange or unexpected about topics that you have no experience with. So don't panic or struggle. Just be creative. Like we said before, just make something up as long as it makes sense. Another don't is to not put yourself down, not audibly, at least don't criticize your own language skills. Don't give the tester a reason to agree with you that you're not doing well. Lastly, no rehearsed speech. Don't try to lead the tester into a rehearsed or a memorized speech. The tester is trained to recognize this. They'll interrupt you and change the topic, so there's no use in doing that. So now in general, I want to talk a little bit about personal experience and an anecdote. If you're like me in any way, you've probably been assessing yourself throughout this presentation. Are you doubting you can provide a superior level answer even as you're in your native language? What about your target language? Where do you think you're at? Who speaks in paragraphs like that? Who makes sure to support their opinion by building arguments? That's not really the way normal people talk with each other. So to make you feel better, here's an anecdote. The average native speaker off the street will usually score at advanced high or ILR 2 plus. Why is that? That's because they might possess the language necessary to provide a superior level answer, but they're not used to providing that type of speech sample. So what does it mean? It means that knowing the language isn't enough to score high necessarily on your OPI. You need to practice speaking and hitting those key points to satisfy the level requirements. So if there's anything you'd like to add, Lei?
Not really. I just want to emphasize on one point that you were talking about, the don't panic, make up a story. So that's very true. It's a language test. It's not like fact check. No one will fact check anything that you said. So feel free to borrow your friends or family story, or use someone else's opinion, or use something you saw in the newspaper uh, to make them your own in the test. Because as long as you can say it and reach the language benchmarks, then you are successful.
Right. Just try not to be too inappropriate.
Yes.
All right. So I think that we're going to let Priscilla take it away from here. I think she has something to add.
Absolutely. And before we proceed, are there any questions from anyone in the audience?
No questions yet, but I'll let you know if anything comes in.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, ladies, for that. I actually was testing myself, figuring out what I would be. I think you're right. I think most of us unrehearsed would be at that 2 plus because we wouldn't necessarily know that we're supposed to support our opinions. So I think my biggest takeaway is rehearse as if you were a lawyer making a case, right? So that you can hit that ILR 3 level. So in the meantime, I have some exciting news for you. We're going to be launching in 2023 a speaking refresher course. This is a wonderful way in which you can put all of these strategies into practice, because a lot of this really will need to be done with someone else. So these courses are designed to prep you for tests such as the OPI at ILRs 2, 2 plus, and 3. You can sign up for either a 2 or 4-week full-time course that you can complete anywhere. So course materials are custom crafted for DoD linguists just like you, by people just like Lei and Talia. So they have experience in actually testing you. So that's the kind of material that you will have, and they'll cover your domains, everything from politics, economy, technology, cyber, and so on, the things that are going to be on your test. Our instructors are highly experienced with government needs. Many of them are also former DLI or FSI instructors, or may have even administered some of these tests. They're there to guide you, so you can do things such as role plays. You can do a bunch of speaking exercises. They'll practice whether you need help with narrating or summarizing in the past, present, or future tense, maybe at that lower ILR 2 level. You'll get to answer more complex questions. So they'll do things with you like probing to see what your ceiling is, right? And you'll get to discuss any predictable or unpredictable information or outcomes as well. So this is a wonderful way to really use technology and face-to-face time with an instructor to practice for your speaking tests. So if you want to know more, we're going to leave the link to get early access to this refresher course in the chat. We're also going to send this out within 24 hours with a recording of this session. And we'll ask you just a couple of questions after you click that early access link. You'll be asked about your language and the level, and you'll be put on our list so that you'll be the first to know when this launches next year. So super exciting that we're making it available to our community. So any other questions maybe from the audience? Okay, I don't believe I see anything else. So thank you so much, Lei and Talia, for the wonderful session today. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure our audience members did too. And hopefully we'll be launching these next year. We'll also do another round to make sure that we are able to get those people that maybe couldn't join us today. So super exciting. Thank you so much, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.